Hi guys, we are on lesson 3, unit 5. We're still talking about irrigation and watering, and we're going to talk about irrigation specifically in this lesson and the different types of irrigation. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it. So even if you're watering with a watering can or watering hose, you are irrigating. There's some really fancy ways to irrigate and some really basic ones. So water for irrigation is typically like they may dig called like irrigation ditches like this, where they divert the water from rivers. So instead of that water running off and going to a river, they're going to create a contour in the land, and that's going to make the water go towards agricultural use. So there's some different types. There's flood irrigation. So flood irrigation was the first type of irrigation used, other than simply carrying water, to water a field. Water is pumped or brought to the field and spread over the ground using ditches or pipes, with mounds between the pipes or ditches. The soil is soaked by the water and excess runs off the field. So there's some cement channels that they may use in the ditches for flood irrigation. It's the simplest form. It requires no equipment. You don't have to have technology. It's really the least efficient though, because remember we said that the water is going to run off. So as much as 50% of water used in flood irrigation is lost, either evaporated or run off. So the ground's so saturated it can't take out any more water in. So we're really wasting some of that water. You can improve the efficiency of it by leveling the field. Surge flooding. So when you use that, water is released at intervals to flood rather than just flooding all at once. So you do it every once in a while. So that allows the ground to absorb more water and provides more control over the water released. Recycling runoff. So whatever water is running off, take that, reuse it, pump it, and put it back into your irrigation. And use soil moisture sensors. That way you know if your soil is already moist and it's not going to be able to take in any water, then you don't overflood. Why is runoff a problem? Runoff is the excess water that the soil doesn't absorb. So like whenever it rains really hard and you see water running down pastures, farmland, or just in ditches, that's runoff. So it's a problem because of potential contamination of groundwater. When water runs off a field, it doesn't just take the soil. It takes fertilizer, pesticides, herbicides, manure, other organic matter. So limiting this reduces all of that risk. Then we have drip. This is used in gardens a lot. If you've ever heard of like a soaker hose, this is a form of drip irrigation. Usually it's a small pipe like this or hose with little holes in it. And so very slowly, it's going to just drip water into the soil. So it does it very slowly. Sometimes it's called trickle irrigation. Relies on plastic tubes to deliver water through small holes called emitters. So this is used a lot at home. It's nearly 100% efficient. So you have very little water loss this way. It does take a long time, and it's not ideal for large scale operations. But for your gardens, for your home, it's great. So it can be tailored to individual plants. So you customize how much water they need. Water is delivered to the root, so you limit waste. Weed growth is lessened because spaces between plants are allowed to dry out and are not irrigated. So you're not watering the whole garden, you're just watering the plants. Fertilizer can be applied directly where needed. Cost can be low, especially compared to like sprinkler systems. And it works well for home gardens, greenhouses, and crop fields. Then you have spray irrigation, and that's like a sprinkler. Okay? So that's a form of spray irrigation or water sprinklers. Now in the fields, they have a lot higher pressure than we do, in our gardens, but it's still the same concept. So spray or sprinkler irrigation is common. There's a number of different types of spray or irrigation. High pressure relies on a pump to increase water pressure. Water is sprayed up and out. Because the water is sprayed up, much more significant amount is lost to evaporation in the air. Up to about 35% of the total water used is lost to this. So it's not super efficient. Most common is going to be the irrigation system in a center pivot. So that's going to be what you see at most farms. Let's see if they have a picture of it. Okay, we'll look at a picture of that one. It consists of metal frames on wheels, and it just kind of rotates around and sprays in a single unit can irrigate an area of approximately 130 acres. So these are for your large fields. All right, and I've got a picture. So here's some center pivot irrigation systems. If you've seen something like this out in a field, you've seen center pivot. If you've ever flown and you go over like some farm states or farmland, you may see that the area looks like circles. That's because of the center pivot irrigation system, right? So they're grown in circles, big, large circles. All right. Then there's seepage irrigation. So that's used only where the water table is relatively high. So there's a lot of water in the area. It raises the water table or level of groundwater to provide water to plant roots underground. So these are like flood irrigation systems. They use ditches and water retention structures to raise the water table. Water table, remember that's underground, the water table. It must be kept high enough to provide moisture to the soil, but low enough to avoid drowning the plants. It requires careful monitoring because you don't want to just, if you have plants sitting in water all the time, their roots, they're going to rot and they'll be ruined. Because the soil surface is completely dry, seeds may be difficult to start, and you may have to have a second irrigation system. And it's an only option, it's in certain regions where the water table is high. Then we have turf irrigation. So that's to irrigate turf or grassy lawns. It's different. So that includes lawns, but also sports fields, parks, other public spaces. So small-scale spray irrigation systems are most common. Think of like golf courses. Well-planned irrigation improves the health of the turf, reduces the need for pesticides and herbicides, and can reduce water usage. Sandy soils do best with infrequent irrigation, while clay soils may require lighter and more frequent. Healthy and well-irrigated turf withstands footsteps and trauma, recovering better. So there's a couple different types. Traveling irrigators are sprinkler systems. They can be moved by workers, so you just move it around to the different areas. Quick coupler systems offer multiple accesses to city water systems, but still rely on workers attaching sprinklers and hoses. And then installed irrigation systems are more effective choice. These are like sprinkler systems where the sprinkler heads are underneath the ground, and it's usually all run in a garage or a main system with like a keypad or breaker box looking item there. So just to recap, irrigation's purpose is to move water from one place to another to water plants, and there's different styles. There's flood, where they use pipes or ditches. It's not the most efficient. There's drip, which is very efficient, but it takes a lot of time, and you have to rely on those soaker hoses or small pipes. And then there's spray, like your sprinkler system.